Thanks for logging on to Wayne.com for a Komets edition of Inside the Zone. Alongside me, as always when we're talking Komets, is Blake Sebring of the News Sentinel. And Blake, we're going to start out with some general questions and then get a little more specific. I think the general question that fans are asking is just what's up with the Komets? What's going on right now? They're 5-10-1, and it hasn't been that smooth transition to the CHL. I know it's an open-ended question, but what's up with the Komets?
Well, I think there's a couple basic things. You look at who are the highest paid guys on a team. I mean, we don't know exactly what they make, but you can pretty much guess. I mean, and then you look at their statistics and see what they've produced, and it hasn't worked out that way.
So, in your estimation, the veterans perhaps bringing more productivity is something that's definitely needed at this point of the season?
Well, let's look at it. You've got Leo just got a couple goals the other night, and he'd been struggling. PC's been struggling. Guy has been struggling to produce points. He's played pretty well defensively. Matthew Curado has struggled. That's pretty much, one line that's really struggled. That's supposed to be your top line and your top defensemen that have struggled to produce points. And this team has lost a ton of one-goal games. I mean, it's just like if they were doing what they normally you could expect them, the Komets would be 10-5 instead of 5-10.
When you take a look at what they lost, obviously you knew going into the season Colin Chalk was going to be a loss, Huckalo is going to be a loss, Shaffy's going to be a loss, Bertram's going to be a loss. Have those guys, has their impact been felt a little bit more, or their lack of impact, the fact that they're not here, been felt more than I think most people thought at the beginning of the season?
Oh, I think every season is unique. I mean, and I think we've found that out over the last 3-4 years. I mean, even if there's a ton of guys coming back, every team has to mold itself into this specific team. Sure, those guys are missed. They're missed in the locker room, I would think, almost more than they're missed in the ice. I mean, they're not, Bert and those guys and Huck, you got to have a tremendous amount of respect for them, for what they accomplished and how they performed and the way they played. But then you look at what the Komets had coming in, and everybody thought at the start of the year that they should be just flying right from the start because they replaced those guys with players of similar capabilities who were just younger. Some of that's worked out. Craig Sescon has been fantastic as someone to take over Bert's role, and that's been really great. Derek Petrasso, who's hurt right now, but he's played pretty well. He'd like to score more, of course, and he's filled in for Matt Sarazinski pretty well. Huckalo, you could argue that Kaylee Schrock has stepped his game up and has filled that role. You could look at it that way. Shafranov, you think Curado, and you think that's a pretty favorable fill-in right there, but that hasn't worked out. You're thinking about your top two centers on this team are probably Curado and Thomas, and both of them have really struggled to push to score.
And when you take a look at offensively, that is really where this team is hurting, at least on paper. 35 goals, by far last in the CHL. Bloomington's got 46, so there's a gap, although the Komets have played the fewest games in the CHL, so those total numbers are a little bit skewed. Offensively, what hasn't really clicked for this team at this point?
It's the lines just haven't worked. I don't know why, and they've tried several different lines. They've tried mixing it up. They had a group last week with Chris Francis and Kaylee Schrock and Sean O'Connor with Brandon Warner and Frankie DeAngelis, and they were fantastic. They revitalized the power play, and they scored, I think, 9 goals in 3 games. And then this week, Brandon and Frankie are playing with somebody else, and the other 3 guys are with another new defensive pairing, and you got to readjust. And you'd think maybe they were trying to get another line going by playing in with those guys, and it didn't work. It just kind of took the other line, the one that had been going, it slowed them down.
Defensively, Komets, numbers-wise, they haven't been bad. I think.
No, defensively they've been fine.
I was going to say, I think at this point you would say that that's been the strength.
Here's a fascinating stat. Before this week, for 4 weeks in a row, Nick Boucher and Kevin Ryder have decreased their goals against average and increased their save percentage 4 weeks in a row. And that was when the Komets were losing 5 in a row, then they won 3 in a row. Every week their numbers got better, even if the team wins, losses didn't, which is pretty amazing.
And you take a look at the numbers for Ryder and Bush. Really, like you said, they're not bad.
No.
I mean, other than win-loss, which technically
Right.
doesn't necessarily fall directly on their shoulders given the offense at this point. But you're talking about Bush has given up 2.7 goals. Ryder's given up a little over 3.1. So they're right at about 3 goals a game. That's not terrible.
And Ryder had the bad game Friday night, which really skewed his numbers too. I mean, even this week, Nick Boucher's save percentage went up. I mean, this is pretty baffling. I think we're getting to the point too where the defensemen are trying to add more offense to the process, and they're getting caught. They got caught a little bit this week, and that kind of hurt them. I mean, that led to some goals because I think they were trying to lean towards the other end to maybe help out there a little bit more than they had been, and they ended up getting caught on some odd man rushes.
Well, you mentioned some defensive players playing well offensively. I guess Frankie DeAngelis is one of the bright spots this season. He leads the team with 14 points. He's got 4 goals, 10 assists. So currently leading the team with 14 points, as I said. What has he done to elevate his game? He's CHL Player of the Week a couple weeks ago.
Again, that was part of that 9 goals, and I think 6 of them were power play goals. That group was playing really well. You had Brandon working up and down the wall that made the other weak side forward have to play honest with him, and that opened it up for everybody else. And you had Kaylee in front taking the beating. You had Frankie firing from the point, and you had Sean O'Connor and Chris Francis sniping from the wings. Everybody fit together. They worked well together.